on the air.
Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being produced here at Think Twice Radio, the home of the future, thanks to our producer, Richard Wicca. Thanks, Richard. And I'm your host, Vicki Ross. I'm the executive director at the Western New York Peace Center, and I'm very excited about our guest today for this special segment that we're doing on, we're calling it Women's Herstory and Intersectionality. So we have, maybe I'll just go around the circle here. We have Dr. Karen King, who is the executive director of the Commission for the, here, I knew I was going to do this. Help me. It's the Commission for...
It's the Erie County Commission on the Status of Women, and I am also the Commissioner for Public Advocacy.
And the Commissioner for Public Advocacy. That's right, that you're the Commissioner for Public Advocacy, which is so critical for women and for all of us. So thank you so much, Karen, and the Erie County for doing all that great work that you're doing. We'll hear some more about that. And welcome Nadia Sharam. Nadia Sharam is an attorney, matrimonial mediation specialist, and just a wonderful shero. We love to talk with anytime. Nadia, hi.
Hi. Glad to be here. Thank you.
So glad to have you. And so, and Vanetta Rhodes. Vanetta is a poet, is an advocate for daycare, for women, for a just and beloved society. And welcome, Vanetta.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to have all three of you here, and I feel like it's like old home week. We've all mixed and matched in different times and ways, and so much great work, if I do say so myself, being done by women. You know, it's the old thing when, well, of course I don't look as busy because I did it the first time kind of thing. Although actually then we just go on to have another thing and another thing, right? Speaking of which, so why don't we start off with what we were starting off with right before anything is what you were doing today and the special nature of today. Karen, if you would.
Today is what is designated as All Women's Equal Pay Day, although it's not really All Women's Equal Pay Day, but it's a designation to emphasize the fact that all women have to work into the following calendar year to earn the same amount as a man in the previous calendar year. So today is March 24th.
Right.
So a woman would have to work a year and 3 months in order to make something equivalent to what a man would make. But if you intersect, you're talking about intersectionality earlier.
Right.
Black women, Native American women, Latino women, much later in the calendar year in terms of equal pay. So pay inequity is gendered and classed and raced, and it's a persistent problem.
Right.
So today was the designation for All Women's Equal Pay Day. So I was involved in an event earlier today focusing on economic equity and justice for women.
Right. Well, it's so important in so many ways that women don't get a fair shake. And I know, the public advocacy that goes on, that needs to go on, and especially on the status of women is something that, we've been working on, and I know actually all of us have been working on in different ways and times. And that's one of the things that we're really going to focus on today. So one thing I did ask, and I didn't follow up with it, but I want to ask you, Vanetta, as I said, that you are a poetess or poet, I don't know which you prefer, but if you were willing to share a poem with us, that would be really wonderful.
Yes, I am willing. Just give me a few minutes because I just got on
Oh,
and
okay.
I transitioned from work and I do
Sure.
have the poem ready.
Oh,
I
you
just
do.
need to get it in my fingertips.
Sure. Okay. Well, you take
I
your,
can say a few minutes. Maybe I can say something now.
please, please.
Uh, yeah, I was, I am originally from Iran, and I'm pretty sure I'm here in your show not because I am a mediation attorney, but because I'm an advocate for legal rights of Muslim women through the Coalition of Sisterhood, which is a 501c3
Hmm.
company. Now, one of the first things that I learned about equality in pay for Muslim women is that in Muslim countries, if men and women are holding the same position, same ranking, surprisingly, they receive the same amount of pay. And, I was surprised because Muslim women, they don't have many rights as American women we have here.
Right.
But equal pay for the same job is one of the things that has been going on since everybody remembers. There has
Right.
not been, that gap in terms of payments. I mean, there are other gaps, of course,
Right.
but in terms of equal pay, Muslim women have been paid equal for equal job with men. And another thing that Muslim women around the globe, they have it, is that they have 1 year off maternity leave with pay. This is
Wow.
like shocking. This is like, it doesn't go along the same stereotyping as we know about Muslim women equality,
Right.
but that's how it is. And for Muslim women who are always looking at American women to learn from American women and to be enlightened by all the freedom of speech, freedom of movement
Mm.
that we have here, it is shocking to learn that we don't have the base for women here, which is equal pay for equal job.
Right. Well, I wonder actually, that makes me, first of all, that's very interesting and so important because we do make assumptions sometimes, and we all know how helpful that is not. Um, but the other piece it makes me wonder is in this country, what is the status of Muslim women and pay? I wonder well, I would say especially either of you or any of you know that. I mean, I don't, because I know I've seen some of the things that you're talking about, Karen, with the different, the different intersectional women in different intersectional spaces, what their pay is. But I don't remember seeing it about Muslim women, and I wonder if it's how it reflects here in this country.
I believe it is equal to the discrimination that other women are
Right.
facing, whether they are
Sure.
white or they are black, right? So they fit right into a stereotyping that uh, women's job and worth is less than that of man.
Right, but I'm just saying, we were just saying that for black women, they get paid even worse than white women, right? So the length of time it takes even longer for them to earn it'll be further into the year before they earn just what the man for the same job earned in the previous year. So it's just anyway, it's something to Google sometime or DuckDuckGo it or
Right.
something. So we can find that out as we go along. But thank you for bringing that up because it just shows how much we need to not make assumptions about the roles in different places and different ways. So anyway, so thanks. So Vanetta, do you have your poem ready?
Yes, I do. Yes, I
Oh,
do.
that would be
And
wonderful.
it popped up right when I told you that. Isn't that the way life works? As soon
Oh,
as you say
yes.
you think you don't have something, you do. And sometimes that's the story of women. Just when we think we lost something, it was within us anyway, right? And we have it going on. So, okay. Would you like for me to begin?
Please.
Okay, this is called True Freedom, or otherwise called For My Sisters. For my sisters, poetry cannot express what I feel for you. Ironclad, love fisted mothers of the struggle, so much admiration is due. Life reflection of onyx and black, you are indeed resurrection in motion for my sisters. Living every day from the irreversible disease of replication, your sores run deep. We pray for scabs so at least the signs of injustice are not visible. Because we've done our research enough to know that if it can't be seen, it ain't real. I stand with you in the midst of emotionally tormented dust bunnies, mold, and ragweed, feeling all too embarrassed to show your resources were violently exploited once again, and still no win. For my sisters, poetry cannot express what I feel for you. You know the real loneliness in standing in welfare offices, custody courts, and child support lines. You never felt so ridiculous and ill fated at times. You now have learned the inconvenient definition of the word comfort because you have two pills to swallow, one of pain and struggle, and must drink glasses of salvation water to drown them down. For my sisters, poetry cannot express what I feel for you. Not afraid to reinvent yourselves, unimpressionable chameleons, kaleidoscope and Mary Magdalene, so you cannot be imprisoned. Words cannot express you. Labels fall empty into hollow boxes. Negatively charged electrons repel the definition of you. For your movement is fluid and biblical, without limits and undefined. So flow where you want to, go where you need to, live within the courage daily to let your color bleed outside the lines. Love paints your fingertips and care is your canvas. For my sisters, poetry cannot express what I feel for you. Painful lessons embraced, but hurt is now left behind. Keep standing, keep fighting, fight to stand on and stand up for fighting. Your eyes stretch beyond imagination. You are kitchen goddesses who create our own milk and oil for liberation, love, food. Masters of the breast, centering humanity between our chests. You are the hand, the rock, and the cradle that rules the world. You span across generations, living among multitudes. Your souls are merely skin grafts of the original blueprint, and your revolutionary poetry will be claimed only in the name of the good creator above. For my sisters, poetry cannot express what I feel for you. For as long as sexism, classism, and racism exist, we all have a cross to bear, but death is not a fixed reality in this life. Does not have to be captivity. True divine freedom is being able to know that I love you always. Thank you.
Woo! Wow. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Bravo.
Oh,
Powerful.
bravo. So powerful. Yes. So beautiful. So moving.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So beyond. Now, wait. What did you call it? True freedom? Was that what?
Yes,
Yeah.
true
Freedom.
freedom in brackets for my
For my
sisters.
sisters, which I wouldn't forget that piece. Oh, dear. Oh, wow. You brought so, so strong, so beautiful. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Vanetta. Really so beautiful.
Hmm.
And so
I
much.
think
Oh, go ahead.
I make a comment about the poem, and in my opinion, the responsibility of female poets.
Mm-hmm.
This is a poetry is a medium of art that I think it puts a big responsibility on shoulders on shoulders of women to express eloquently and beautifully about the pain and discrimination and biases. And I think it will have a better effect than writing a proposal. I mean, writing a proposal has its own, its own effect, but to say it comes from heart and it sits in heart, you know.
So beautiful, so powerful. And we need, actually it makes me think of, we need, all of these elements, and they work in different ways and times. So the power of your poetry is so, and the beauty is so extreme. And then so it moves the heart, and then it's like, okay, then, so if we're going to move the heart, let us move it into action, into a proposal, or into, a program or a policy or a change, and changing, people's hearts and attitudes too. Educating. I think of Peace Jam, we talk about inspiration, education, and action. And I think that's such a great way of, and that's a kids program that we're doing, that actually we're doing tomorrow. You could find it on our calendar, but it's also just a way of the thinking, feeling, and doing, or the different aspects of our lives, how we need to get all of those things working together.
Thank you. I think I'm one of those poets or artists or something that thinks anything and everything that a woman has within her. People, period. But for this call that we're on, this gathering, everything that women have going for them is your poetry. So if you are a dancer, that's your poetry. If you are a visual artist and you paint, then you paint poetry on campus, on canvas. If you are an advocate, then advocacy, the way you gather and get people to believe, is your poetry. And that was pretty much the thread throughout the whole piece when we talk about especially intersectionality. And I know it has official definitions and things like that of what it is and quite possibly what it ain't. But, just when it comes to women, we have to cross so many sections. We cross sections, we intersect, we weave, and then at the same time, we want to be ourselves, and just breathe and things like that. So, that is, it can be a heavy crown to wear on the head, but it is also very liberating in knowing that we have so many things within us, just great. In humanity, and just thinking about what the last speaker has said about Muslim women and being here in America and things like that, it can be such a misconception, America the beautiful, America the free, and all of that. And okay, it's good to have a nationalistic, or need I say, and I really don't want to say this word, patriotism. I want to say a matriotism is better.
There you go.
However, it's good to have that. But when you begin to study history, you see that there were some our great moments for women, but how much more work we have to accomplish. Just thinking that even last week with the vice president, that someone was literally waiting outside of her home, with a gun in a car, waiting to do something. So, I mean, what do you say to that? You know, the women, Asian women, what happened to them,
Right.
and
Right.
the two additional Caucasian women, you know, and they're trying to link that to something other than an act of terrorism. Any act of, to me, violence against women is an act of domestic terrorism. And that's why women, in my opinion, here in America, we are prisoners of war until sexism is annihilated off the planet. So it just is how much work we have to be done. It's a struggle, but at times it can be a beautiful struggle. So I can go on and on about this stuff, so I'm gonna be quiet.
Oh, I love everything you had to say, and that's why you're such a poet as you describe, as you talk about it. So I love as you said, although poetry does not begin to describe how I feel about my sisters. Anyway, so beautiful. I just want, I'd like to put this out for each of you to comment on, because I have often thought, well, first of all, racism goes so deep, and it's in the air we breathe, and we have to recognize it and address it and deal with it, deal with the history, deal with the pain and all that's gone before and all that is currently happening before we can make progress. But I also think that misogyny and sexism, misogyny or sexism, whatever we want to call, runs as deep. That also runs very deep because it gets all mixed up with gender roles, sexuality, and power. So I wonder what you all think about that.
Is there a question?
Yeah, it is as a question. Do you think, how deep does it go?
When I think about these things, I think of the way that white supremacy and white heteropatriarchal white supremacy operate as a system.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Right.
racism, misogyny, sexism are products of that structure.
Mm-hmm.
And that create, that enforce white supremacy and patriarchy, and misogyny is an enforcer of patriarchy. Misogyny, or like the foot soldiers that go out there and do the work, right?
Sure.
And the way racism operates, and the way white privilege and white supremacy operate, as structures. So am I surprised that, women haven't experienced pay equity in the United States, which is not the same as equality? And the pay equity movement has really adopted the term equity, because paying women and men equal does not abolish gender bias.
Right.
Particularly when women perform an enormous amount of unpaid labor,
Please.
caregiving labor.
Yes.
And, I'm not surprised that they give a year off of paid maternity leave in a patriarchal country, because the expectation is that women's primary goal is to reproduce and care for children and aging family members. We are primarily caretakers. Here in a capitalist country where everything is about money, I'm not surprised, that we're not paid for it, because it's considered a liability if you're trying to build a career to reproduce. And, I often said that, when women get pregnant, they should get like a signing bonus, like an NBA player or an NFL player who signs a contract. They should get a signing bonus, right? For services provided and rendered, in maintaining and perpetuating humanity.
Right.
You're welcome. You're
Yes.
welcome.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
So, capitalism and white supremacy, these are structures that create circumstances that, of course, create these intersections between racism, misogyny, male privilege, white privilege.
Right.
And it's important for us to understand how they're interconnected.
Mhm.
They run deep because, in terms of American culture, our culture was founded on white supremacist
Right.
patriarchy,
Right.
founded on it.
Right.
It's in the fabric of who we are. So yes, it runs very deep.
Right. Right. So well put. Thank you for all of that. That is very beautifully developed
That was hot,
structure.
wasn't it?
What? It was very hot.
That
Yes.
was a lot.
It was a lot, and it was just right on. It was so right on. So I mean, and that's how it goes so deep and so strong, because those structures that we don't even see, but they act in such a mammoth way. They're very pronounced. They're very pronounced.
Well, as literally in the air we breathe.
Right. Exactly. I use that phrase a lot.
Invasive.
So what do you say, Nadia, to the depth and breadth of the patriarchy?
If I look at one country in particular, country of my birth, Iran, patriarchy and misogyny did not exist before the religion came to the country.
Uh-huh.
There is incredible evidence of women as queens and as kings, meaning that queens that really ran the country along the side with the king.
Mm-hmm.
And as statements, as generals in all spheres of life. So this is old Persia. This is where women, they were honored and they were treated equally. And I love the distinction that Karen did in terms of equal pay does not mean gender equality,
Right.
which after the introduction of religion in the country, then everything kind of changed, which means that patriarchy and misogyny, which is embedded in the interpretation of the religion that people are following, that created all these, issues and biases, and misogyny and patriarchy are huge in countries such as Iran presently.
Right. Right. That is such a big thing. As I was saying before, I don't know if I was saying it, but just this religion is one of the places where patriarchy is so pronounced in almost every religion, really, under the guise of, under all the other, words and excuses, but it's very pronounced, it seems to me, in all of the religions.
Mm-hmm. At the time that Iranians were following Zoroastrian,
Mm-hmm.
Zoroastrianism,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and there again, there is incredible evidence that men and women were looked equally in all sphere of life, even under Zoroastrianism, and their philosophy was and is, say no evil, do no evil, and hear no evil. And their book is very thin because the philosophy is something that people used to live on day to day. Now, when we look at all these religious books, it's like you have so many interpretations, and that drives all of us crazy, if that's an okay word to use here.
I think it's an appropriate word. I think we need that word. March Madness, during Women's Month. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Well, I just want to lean in a little bit.
Please.
And definitely connect with everything by saying that, first of all, I should have known with everybody who are going to be in this meeting, I needed to bring a notebook and pen because I was going to get taken to school. I hope we are recording.
We are.
But when it comes to women and work, and the notion of work, even attaching that to certain cultural belief systems and mindsets. You know, we have to sometimes, I've learned as a woman of African descent, and the experience that I want to share is that it can be the way that the culture, and sometimes it's not the culture, it can just be patriarchal supremacist thought, see work in the work that women rightfully and equitable in all senses of the word, require and deserve. So what am I saying? We have to look at history at that too. So for one example I'll give you is this. I was at my college campus talking with a group of men about the system of enslavement. So, you know, back then it was the 90s and they were saying, oh, you know, the man, the black man is oppressed, and, you know, he was out there in the field and getting whipped and killed and everything. Okay, I don't disagree with that. I don't, you know, but remember that there were sisters out there as well in the field, but also sisters in the house. And our work never stopped. Nobody's did, but our work never stopped. Meaning what? I said to these brothers, our work was in the field, in the house, and then we couldn't even go home at night because then Massa would be coming into the quarters to take what he wants sexually, rape what he wants sexually.
Right.
After a while, it became an expectation and not welcome, you know, but definitely that is our work never ends. And so then the brethren I was sitting with at the time and talking, they said, well, you know, sex, do you really consider that work?
It's
Under
worse
those
than work.
circumstances, yes.
It's
and
worse.
I don't even want to say in any circumstance, you know, but yes, indeed. You know, the work ethic, the work requirements, these sweat equity and the human equity and violence and everything else and destruction, you know, that women of every culture and color have endured. We are still expected to rake ourselves across fires for little pay, and our generosity and our natural instinct of caregiving is what's supposed to guide our acceptance of reduced pay when it comes to our male counterparts. And you know, me in the field of early care and education is definitely throughout there. You know, and I used to be even before this a Sunday school teacher and things like that. And oh, you know, you have to just do it for the kids. You know, you're a mother, you're a this, you're a that. You know, so it shouldn't be about the money for you. It's not about the money. Well, it's about the life. Where's the true currency? The currency shouldn't be on the dollar. The currency should be, when we talk about matrilineal consciousness, you know, in the woman and what we do and what we provide and what we symbolize. Like the last speaker said as well, and I have to learn her name.
Oh, Nadia.
You know, Nadia. Said as well that, you know, women, we were, you know, centralized into and energized the culture. You know, we gave birth, we nurtured families, everything tied in with agriculture. You didn't have an economic system if you didn't have women. How could you have anything?
Right. No, you know, I feel like everything you're saying is so true. First of all, not only work, it is just the height of violence. You know, it is such a violence and such a violation. That word violence being that to violate, right? To violate somebody's rights. So having, you know, rape is such a violence. So there's that, and it brings it into the other thing that we've touched on. I want to go into a little bit more because they had International Women's Day, and some people call it International Women Workers Day. So, and I'm all about Ain't I a Woman's great campaign that wants to stop these 24-hour shifts they give and charge, and then people get paid for 12 hours. So Google it, you can sign it, or we have it on our website, Ain't I a Woman campaign. But anyway, I said, it is International Women's Day, not just International Working Women, because lots of women's work is unpaid. It's just expected, and it's the tyranny of the helpless, or it's just because the love is that and then women are just expected to do it. So to talk a little bit about that unpaid work, and that, as you say, that sort of servitude that the love we're expected, our hearts are taken advantage of. Let me put it that way. Right? And as a social worker, I want to say, let's talk about that. But if it's for daycare, it's for everything. All that loving care, paid and unpaid.
You have to think about a woman's worth in patriarchy. So if a woman's worth was framed around this idea as someone who reproduces, right? And is there at the pleasure of men, right? Whether she's there at the pleasure of men or pleasing men or reproducing the population, right? So a woman's worth becomes tied to this idea of being a reproducer, right? And a rearer of the population. And then you create a narrative around this idea that women are naturally nurturing, and I don't know if all women are natural nurturers. I don't know. I mean, I know we've been taught that, but can we generalize that? No, but it's a narrative that's woven into this story of who we are. And to Vanetta's point about, well, of course you're going to do it for the kids. Of course you're going to do it for free. So it perpetuates this narrative that women will continue to give their labor away, right? Because they want to, because it's the way we're wired, because it's in our DNA, or it's in our genetic makeup, rather than it being a story constructed to reinforce a system that continually disenfranchises women. Right?
I think what you're saying, Karen, it's so interesting and so true that once we learn of a narrative, then we believe the narrative. And the danger of this one single narrative is that you feel guilty if you don't go along with the narrative. And if I give you one example as a divorce attorney, I do 100 divorces per year. And when it comes to changing of the name of women at the time of divorce, women are having hard time to change to their maiden names. And I have been interested, for the last several years to write a paper, and I'm doing a research on that and collecting data as to why women feel guilty, whether they have children or they don't, because the narrative all along has been family. So if you all keeping the same last name at the time of marriage, women have to change. And society and law have made it easy for women. You just put a check into the box. Whereas if a man was to change his name at the time of marriage, is not possible. It's a legal event, which means it's much harder for men to change their last names. So at the time of marriage, and recently, a very close friend of mine, her daughter, very well accomplished, a physician. She is a surgeon, and she is young, she's beautiful, highly educated, born and raised here from Middle Eastern descent. When I went to her wedding and I saw that she has hyphenated her name and then has added her husband's last name. I was mortified. And when I saw that a month ago, it prompted me to write this article.
Mhm.
And that is all because we have been taught that that single narrative, the narrative that Karen was talking about, that it's the women who have to change their last names because it has become part of the system. You want to be part of a family, you change your last name at the time of marriage.
Right.
What about at the time of divorce? Women, they tell me that they do not want to change because it means their children will not have the same last name as their mother, and people, they don't look good upon that, like something was wrong with the mother, you know. So it is, we all have to be careful about believing the narratives that have been given to us.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Although I feel like for the narrative, I mean, to be skeptical of the narrative, but I do feel like women, we have some things and their strengths that are, and that they're the compassion and and I did any of you ever read this Games Your Mother Never Taught You about corporate gamesmanship? But they basically said, well, women have not done sports and they've not done the military, right? So they don't get the chain of command thing. They don't get the thing of you stick with your job and not helping each other. Well, yes, we don't get it in that way because women work more as a network and help each other more. We're encouraged to do that, and I think part of that is a socially, as a social construct or whatever. But part of it is also, I feel like women, may have so you're shaking your head. You don't think so? More?
What I'm going to say is this: women, the oppressed, always have to be studying the oppressor.
Right, sure.
When it
Yep.
comes to strategizing and surviving,
Mm-hmm.
women know how to do that.
Right.
Women are always attuned to the oppressor or those who inhabit spaces of power.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who's been disenfranchised knows the rules of the game. It might not have been formalized on a sports field or in the military, but women have been engaged
Right.
in battle since the dawn of time, right? Since patriarchy has existed. So we are always attuned to power relations and strategizing and surviving. And we have to work collectively to survive. I don't know if women are more naturally collaborative or more conciliatory. People say that all about, when they're talking about women's leadership styles, to me, it's a form of survival. If you're part of a disenfranchised class and you know who's in power,
Right.
there are no mysteries around that. You understand how the game is played, and you have to modulate your behavior and your speech every moment. That's strategy.
Right.
That's
Right.
survival and strategy. So I think we label things differently, right? So we valorize what men do. Men engage in war, men are powerful, men dominate. Women don't understand strategy because they didn't play sports. Yes, we do. We play sports now too, by the way.
Right. Sure.
But,
Sure. Well, this is an old
No,
book
I'm
too.
sorry.
This
We get acknowledged now, and we get scholarships and we have title. But we're always strategizing as a form of survival, as a class, as a disenfranchised class. And then you bring intersectionality into it, and you bring in white supremacy and racism and classism and ability status and all the other things that intersect with power relations. Women have to negotiate all of those.
Mhm.
So we're
Right.
always negotiating. In a second, right? We have to make a split second decision. Should I open my mouth right now? If I do, will I jeopardize my job? And if I jeopardize my job, what will I do? Or should I walk down that street street, or should I do this? I mean, we're constantly negotiating our spaces.
Right. Right.
Well, I think as well, though, a few things. Coming from if you come from and I don't know who doesn't, but I'll just speak from within my skin and my truth, that when you come from a village concept centered people of the circle, and where everybody has a role and everybody has use and is concentric and independent yet interdependent, then you see nurturing and you value nurturing in a different way, but you do indeed value it. But I'm saying that to say what? That as women, especially of today, and really throughout history, and really when we even look at our history here on American soil, North American within the United States of America, after the imperialism set in, we definitely have to continue to speak up and own our own right to having our own narratives, and putting it together, and defining terms for ourselves, living according to our own terms as women, like what Nadia mentioned, that just because you don't wear your husband's last name, or I should say your significant other's last name, it doesn't mean that you bring shame on the marriage, or if you're divorced, or if you choose to be divorced, or even if you're happy just being single and that's it. When my son and his father, when we went separate ways, we were not married. However, that was the first lash that I felt like I was wearing, because it was coming. Even when I went to the child support office and I went here and there, you're by yourself. You're a single parent. You're a this, you're a that. Okay, I do understand the concept and notion of being a single parent, but the way I saw it is I am not a single parent. I am a single family. His father is still involved. It's just that we're not together. My son still, has a unit, a support unit in his grandmothers, in his aunts, in his teachers. He has a village, a nation, that is there for him, to care for him and with him, and me. So I am not a some type of individualized unit, if you will. Really, to me, it's less than, you're made to look subhuman. Once you are detached, to me, it wasn't a detachment. It was just a new definition of life, from the person that you were in a relationship with. And so I'm connecting that today, especially in that, with equitable pay, with women's economic work rights, with our socioeconomic rights. I want to even say our emotional rights in all of that. By saying, because you hear it a lot, you hear it in the government and everything else, we're going to do a care bill, we're going to do a care plan, we're going to, all of this, things where care is starting to be marketed and farmed out in different ways. And there's a lot of good things to that. Now, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is, if we, especially as women, do not engage in and create our narrative, in various narratives, because we're diasporic, we're all over the world, in terms of approaches and what care is, all of it, will continue to hear that care word, but continue to be underpaid and underserved. So, and that can be not just in childcare or in education, that can be even up in the corporate business, you name it, criminal justice, all of that, all of it.
So, what you're saying is making me think of one other thing I wanted to bring up, and that is, which is to do with intersectionality to a certain extent. But so when we think about what are women's issues, so one of the critiques, first of all, of the women's movement over time, okay, so we know that in the very early time of the women's movement, the racism really just was a very big factor in the way things went down and how very wrongly things went down. Whereas it could have been more of a, we're working together for this, but the racism was still present. So people have evolved, people have learned, but I read recently, there's a book, Hood Feminism. So, and the basic premise was, yes, sure, more women in boardrooms, more, recognition for women at higher level jobs is, one thing, but that the women's movement really needs to be concerned about housing, about, very practical financial issues and other things, that are, public transportation issues, things that women are dealing with every day that are making their lives harder because those things are not buttressed up when we are the ones who, back to maybe running the family, maybe heading the family, and that those issues coming for women, those are still women's issues. What do you all think about that? The broadening out of what are women's issues, I guess, is really what they talk about, what this woman was talking about as a Black woman.
Well, I agree with it, definitely, because that's, pretty much been my point throughout from the poem all the way on down, is that, and to me, that's why there was a transition of numbers of women back in the day from feminism to womanism as well, because there were factors that, seem to address the condition, not just of African oriented women, but other women around the planet. But the premise is this, especially when we are in this presence of life that we are here in America, is that women, no matter what you do, no matter where you are, whether you're working in the home, working outside of the home, or if you don't call it work, whatever it is for you,
right?
That you have the right to your own narrative. And you have the right to, administer that narrative or administer that narrative any way that you feel is right for you, without being policed, without being slut shamed. And that word I have a problem with, because when we say slut shame, well, you already done said it, slut. And you're putting a shame to that. And then that's relaying back to me and my sexual freedom. That's another show. But all I'm trying to, really say is that, this is where we are everywhere we go. We have to feel comfortable in knowing that we have a right to our own narrative. And we bring that narrative everywhere and in everything we do, from being a mother to being a sister, daughter, to, the way in which we work and interact with people in our neighborhoods, in our spiritual organizations, in our schools.
Right.
Everywhere and anywhere and wherever you choose to do it, because you don't have to do it every place that you are. That's where that right comes in, the right to be, I am as
Right.
a woman.
Right, right. I can't believe that we're coming up on the end of this talking peace segment. So, what would you think that? We have a women's march meeting on Saturday. I think I might have mentioned it maybe before the show. That it's at 2:00 this coming Saturday. So for that, or just in general, what do you think women? What's your sort of bottom line thing that you think women want to really focus on in this time, and place? So for each of you, just briefly, sort of, what's your thing, your takeaway, or your offering, I should say.
Well, I think as a white woman who inhabits the space of privilege, I'm very, I think we have to be committed to a much more intentional allyship, and we have to be contesting white supremacy every day. We have to be engaged in anti-racist feminist action, and we have to recognize our positional power and privilege, and use it to eradicate white supremacy and white privilege. And I think feminists have a responsibility to do that work, and have been engaged in it since the suffrage movement and the abolitionist movement, but certainly have been hindered by our racism. And that's still present, by the way. That hasn't gone, but there's more awareness. But I would say that is an overarching agenda item, is to promote anti-racist feminist action.
Right.
I
Thanks,
think
Karen. Go ahead, Nadia.
for me, being involved with low-income immigrants and refugees, which are quite a bit in the section of being the most marginalized, section. They have quite a few obstacles to overcome, and equality with white men is not on the agenda yet for them. For them, it is issues like domestic violence that it is threatening their lives, and taking the children away from them, because usually the husbands are more powerful. They have been here for few years young, more, and also they speak the language better than this women. So for me, I think that at the same time that I am for empowerment of women. But sometimes, in particular, these marginalized, communities, they wouldn't know what to do with this empowerment of equality with white male or white female. Class is an important issue. Class remains important issue for low-income immigrants in this country.
Thank you so much. We'll talk some more later too, actually, on that. And Vanetta, what would you say? Just for reminder, and what we can bring, and we'll bring it up in this meeting too.
So much change, but so much more to gain. Every issue that we raised on this call, because it's a wheel, it's a ball, it's not just one phallocentric item that we can attack that pierces the universe, and then all problems are solved. So therefore, domestic violence, violence against women, pay equity, marital rights, birthing rights, our right to, simply be and own, have agency over our own stories and narratives. the continuate in other types of injustice as well, and inequity and injustice, and also, linking this story with our members and allies in who are LGBTQ, and how that even weaves itself into this whole thing that we talked about tonight. So
Sure.
there's just like women's work. Just for this call and Women's Herstory Month, women's work is never done. However, we do have a lot to celebrate, and we can stand on. I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, my African ancestors, but also my women ancestors, proudly, proudly.
Proudly with my sisters. So I want to say it has been so wonderful having you on the show, all three of you. My sisters. And I am truly grateful. So this is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace in truth and love. Thanks so much.
Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste. Thank you, Nawe. Is every kind of a thank you to each of you, and big hugs and love.
Thank you.
Yeah, everything in this so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Take care. Thanks a jillion. Big hugs and love. We'll talk some more.
All right.
Okay. Bye for now. Thank you. Take care.
I cannot turn you off.
I know it's hard, right? Yeah, that transitional thing.
I'm trying.